Hello Raptors fans, and welcome to Raptors Report. This has been a tough week for Raptors fans, who've watched their Raptors do a lot of positive things, yet still fall to a dismal 2-8 record, which ranks near the bottom of the league. Now I realize that there's a lot going on in the league right now, but I'm going to mostly be focusing on the Raptors and kind of what's happening with them. The Raptors are quickly reaching a tipping point in the season where their record will present a hole too deep to dig out of. This is a pivotal moment for the franchise, so let's dive in and take a closer look. The first thing that needs to be noted is that Pascal Siakam, one of the team's most important players, has totally snapped out of the funk he was in and is playing like an all-star again. Don't let the two buzzer beaters completely color your perception of him, because if you go by what people are saying on Twitter, you'd think that the guy is playing like an absolute scrub. But in reality, over the past 5 games, he's averaging 23 points, 10 rebounds, 6 assists on 52% shooting and 35% from 3. So not only is he beginning to play like an all-star again, he's added a passing element to his game that he's never shown before. I understand that missing back-to-back buzzer beaters is something that'll piss people off, and yes, I have Raptors PTSD right now, but putting the blame on Siakam feels a bit wrong. But that brings us to the main point. The Raptors have to pick a direction, and quickly. Right now, there are a few huge issues. Number 1, their defense has turned into garbage. Number 2, their bench has sucked. And number 3, this team is mediocre, not truly bad, meaning that they'll probably play their way out of a high pick. I'll address these points backwards, starting with the last point. The Raptors are mediocre and they need to pick a direction. The Raptors are currently 2-8, which puts them at the bottom of the league. But the important metrics, O rating, D rating, and SRS, say that they're a mediocre team rather than a truly bad one. That means that if the Raptors stop getting extremely unlucky, they'll begin to win games, but probably not enough of them to get them over the hump. Last episode, I laid out ways that the Raptors could improve internally, but I think that the reality is that this team, as currently constructed, is not built to win. If the Raptors want to truly compete, they'll have to make a trade, likely for a competent big. Boucher has been incredible, but outside of him, there's a gaping hole at center. And Alex Len and Aaron Baines have been so bad that the team literally cannot play them without conceding a huge run to their opponents. The bench has also been a huge issue. The Raptors have been playing lineups with Terrence Davis, Stanley Johnson, and Norman Powell, 3 guys who have a lot of trouble with decision-making on offense. Stanley Johnson, at the very least, is big and plays decent defense, while Davis has been shooting pretty well. Powell, on the other hand, has been playing very poorly on both ends, and a huge reason is because Marc Gasol isn't around to help him. A huge portion of Powell's offense last season came from playing off of Marc Gasol, who fed him on cuts, got him good looks from 3, and worked with him on dribble handoffs, etc., etc. Now that he's gone, Powell is left to make decisions for himself, which has not gone well, to put it lightly. The big man position and the bench are really what are holding the Raptors back at the moment, so if they do make a trade, those are what I expect the Raptors front office to address. The other option for this season, and I hate to say it but it's starting to grow on me, is to tank. The Raptors have some good pieces. Fred looks like he'll live up to his contract as a borderline all-star guard, and Siakam has rounded into form and looks like he's back to his old self, perhaps even a bit better. Those are 2 guys that are young enough that if the Raptors dipped into the lottery for a season to snag a young star, you could emerge on the other side and build a strong team the next season, with the benefit of having added another building block. By all accounts, unlike last season, this draft is stacked at the top. Kate Cunningham looks like a total stud. Jalen Suggs, Evan Mobley, and Jonathan Kuminga all look like they're great prospects. It's not that bad to be bad this season, in all honesty. Last year's draft had a bunch of question marks at the top, but this year's looks like a bumper crop of franchise-changing talent. But if the Raptors want to truly be bad and go after one of the top picks, they'll also probably need to make some changes. As I mentioned earlier, the stats point towards the Raptors being mediocre. the ball will start to bounce their way, and they'll begin to win some games and probably play their way out of the top of the lottery. But how do they get bad enough to really compete for a top pick? The obvious answer is to trade one of their good players. I've already mentioned Siakam and Fred VanVleet being young enough to outlast a one-season rebuild. The next point that I'll make will be very difficult, and if there was an example of a brain versus heart decision, this would be it. Kyle Lowry. I think anyone watching this channel knows that I hold Kyle Lowry in an incredibly high regard. Lowry is not only the franchise's best player ever, but if you go by advanced statistics, he's been one of the best players in the league over the past decade. He's also probably my favorite player of all time. He's arguably the smartest basketball player in the NBA. He exudes passion, professionalism, heart, leadership, and skill. But he's 34 years old and on the final year of his contract. Teams and fans are already chomping at the bit to add him to their team. Now, I'm not going to suggest that the Raptors should dump Lowry for the first trade that comes along, but if a team puts together a Godfather deal for him, the Raptors should definitely take a look at it. And thus, we're at a tipping point. Which way do the Raptors want to go? And that wraps up this episode of Raptors Report. Even though things have been difficult to watch, the upcoming games will be very interesting, as I believe that they'll determine the course that the Raptors will take for the rest of the season. If you haven't already, please follow me on Twitter at Raps Report for more Raptors and NBA content. Also, remember to like and subscribe the video to help the channel out. And as always, thanks for watching Raptors Report, your source for in-depth Raptors content.